Today's documentary is brought to you by OPGG and their new program, Overwolf. Overwolf is a feature that you can use to get real-time stats on your teammates and your opponents while in Champion Select and in-game. You can see teammates' main roles if they're on a winning or losing streak, so you know whether or not to dodge, and check to see your opponent's experience on their champions as well as their current rune build. You can even use most OPGG features like looking up pro player builds in your matchup without the need to alt-tab, and best of all, this program is completely free to use. If you're interested, a link is in the description down below. I'll be honest, I really have no good reason to dislike TSM. You know why I've rooted against them over the years? I'm a CLG fan, and it's a rivalry. Rivalries don't really make that much sense and can be pretty hateful, but they can also make sports exciting and fun. It's like the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. Those are two NFL teams that have been playing against each other regularly since longer than any of us have been alive. When you have two teams who've been clashing for nearly 100 years, it's only natural to start rooting for the other guy's downfall as much as you want your own success. The TSM and CLG rivalry has been that equivalent for League of Legends. Here you have two teams who are the oldest organizations in League history, both competing in some of the earliest tournaments that ever occurred, and both arguing that they were the best team in North America in their heyday. They've been striving for success, trying to topple each other on their way there for almost a decade now, so naturally this is a pretty interesting and fun rivalry to follow. But if we set that rivalry aside, I gotta say, TSM are a fine organization. They seem committed to success, not being afraid to throw their money around, make roster changes, build infrastructure for their players, and try desperately to set themselves up to win on the international stage, no matter how many times their roster may disappoint. Nowadays, they're maybe more committed than ever to bringing in coaches, analysts, and whatever they need to build their esports teams into champions. However, the TSM organization hasn't always made the right choices. In fact, there was one moment in League's history where they made a mistake. It was a small mistake, but it would eat away at them for years and ultimately resulted in them doing a complete overhaul of their roster. This was a decision that essentially cursed them and created one of the most infamous losing streaks in all of League of Legends. The founding of Team Solo Mid was interesting and a little unusual compared to most other pro gaming organizations. While most other orgs in the world of League of Legends, like Counter Logic Gaming or CLG, formed when a skilled group of players came together to try and compete in early tournaments, TSM was actually founded more as a business. In the early days of League, while the game was still in beta, two brothers, Andy and Dan Din, would found SoloMid.net as a community hub for high-level players to make guides, discuss game strategy, and congregate. It wasn't until later that Solo Mid would be known more for its competitive team rather than its site and guides. After all, in those early days, nobody really knew how big League would get. Once League tournaments started popping up with prize money for the most talented teams, though, a few groups of the highest level players began forming. One of those teams was Counter Logic Gaming, originally founded by Hotshot GG. This was a team that included a number of players known for being the best in the world at the time, two of their superstars being Big Fat GG and Chowster, but there were a number of other players included on the roster, one of which was Andy Din, who went by the username Reginald. Reggie would get frustrated while playing for Hotshot as he felt as though Hotshot wasn't as good of an individual player as the rest of the players on his team, and Hotshot simply got to play himself because he owned the brand. On top of this, there was a little bit of hubris coming from Reggie as he specifically believed that he was a better player overall than Hotshot was, so he decided to quit CLG and go found his own team to compete against them. The second team would be Team Solo Mid, named after the website that he and his brother founded. His brother Dan Din would work closely with him throughout the years, even to this day, but in those early days, he would also found his own competitive team at the same time, named Epic Gamer. This was a team that would disband after Season 1 as they didn't have the same level of branding, monetary backing, or overall success compared to Team Solo a mid. If you listen to the stories of players who played on this team, you'll also hear that they never really practiced or took the game all that seriously anyway. However, they were at times the second best team in North America, only behind CLG or TSM. This smaller organization would also have relevance even to this day, as it would be the starting point for some players who'd enjoy very storied competitive careers. Westrice, Dyrus, and even Doublelift would all begin their pro gaming journeys on Epic. Epic and TSM would sort of function as sister teams due to the obvious connections each team's founders had. When Epic would disband, TSM ended up absorbing most of their players, including their legendary top laner Dyrus, as well as Dandin, who'd stay under the TSM name firstly as a player and substitute, but eventually as a full-time employee who'd work on the back end of the site as well as their merchandise store. The business acumen of Reginald, as well as the intense work ethic he possessed, proved to be invaluable as the team was able to become one of the most profitable organizations in the world. Their early website and other business deals would easily keep their team afloat, even when their competitive roster struggled from time to time. Especially in those early days, Reginald would invest almost everything he made back into the company. One of the earliest examples of this was when TSM got a gaming house. Gaming houses where competitive teams can live, practice, discuss strategy, and bond all together under one roof are pretty commonplace nowadays, but back then this was a huge development for the world of League of Legends. No other League team had a centralized hub like this anywhere in the world. Reginald managed to gather all his players from the different corners of North America under one roof for the first time in competitive League history, with clear motivations towards trying to improve and become the best team in the world. He even made a great decision when deciding on the location of the house. See, even though the North American servers at the time were hosted in Los Angeles, Reginald got the very first TSM gaming house in New York. If he got the gaming house closer to LA, the shorter distance would give his players less ping or less natural delay on game inputs, but there was a benefit to playing from New York State. By getting the house on the East Coast, his players were able to practice both on the North American servers with kind of decent ping, but also on the European servers, as you could get decent ping on the European servers if you were somewhere on the East Coast of the US at the time. This was significant since both NA and EU had great players at the time with vastly different metas developing. NA was focused more on early aggression, roaming, and the utilization of bruiser champions top lane, while many European teams had a bit of a disdain for bruisers and instead mostly ran double mage compositions. Although fanboys may tell you differently, neither region was necessarily ahead of the other at the time. EU would win one major tournament while NA would dominate them at the next one without either region changing their strategy too much from tourney to tourney. Both regions were neck and neck in terms of their skill level, so when Reginald decided to get an East Coast gaming house, he got his players exposure to both styles of play. Not only did they get their regular practice with NA pros as they had previously, but any innovations that Europe came up with, TSM would be very prepared to deal with. While TSM entered tournaments during this time, they'd sometimes get second to their rivals or get upset by an up-and-coming team, but they would ultimately see great success in these early years and became a powerhouse in the competitive league landscape, at least until Season 2.
Being able to go to another culture, especially Asia, and live in that culture, from that point on, you're going to be able to go anywhere in the world and be completely comfortable. And that's something that people really undervalue. So TSM's doing a really good job in America. They do great in Europe as well, but they will probably have a lot of issues if they go over to some place like Korea or China and are expected to stay there for a month or 2 months at a time to play in a tournament.
In Season 2, a new development occurred in the world of League of Legends: Korea. As 2012 rolled around, League would finally be launched in the country with a huge amount of popularity striking right away. Now at the time, players didn't expect Koreans to get so good at the game, or at least not so quickly. When the Korean server launched, there were already some Koreans who played on the North American servers, and they really weren't all that good at the game. Most players didn't know about the massive amount of dominance the region was about to have.
it's so hard to just like, oh wow, we have 5 and these guys are gonna spend every day playing League of Legends. Like, we've already been doing that for like 2 years or like a year or whatever. So like they're gonna be a year behind forever. No matter what, like they're gonna be a year behind.
A few different teams, though, heard that Koreans were getting very good at the game very quickly. After traveling to the region to scout out the local competition, and upon seeing how massive the culture was surrounding the game, as well as how good their players were becoming, most of the top teams from every region, North America, Europe, and even China, decided to spend at least a portion of 2012 in Korea. Western teams wanted to practice against the best competition in the world, as that would be the only shot most teams would have of winning the Season 2 World Championship, or at least we thought at the time. For all the teams that decided to travel there, sometimes they didn't get the results they wanted. CLG North America, for instance, learned a lot and became pretty competitive with most of the Korean teams that were there, but they never quite managed to close the gap completely and win the Korean League or beat the absolute best teams Korea had to offer. Sometimes, though, these trips did work out very well. One of the many success stories being Team WE, or World Elite, from China, who traveled and stayed in the same apartment as the CLG organization. They had their fair share of growing pains in the Korean League, but they learned a lot from their time there. Afterwards, they'd end up taking first place in a number of tournaments, never having any trouble when running into Koreans in bracket. But at the end of the day, Reginald decided it wasn't worth the risk for TSM, and they chose to not go to Korea along with everyone else. There were a few different reasons for this. Firstly, it was a smarter business decision to not go, as Reginald realized that he would lose some fans if TSM wasn't around to stream during primetime NA hours. On top of this, because nobody else was here to stream during those hours and make content for Western fans, TSM could grow their fan base exponentially without any competition. This strategy would succeed in an insane way, as they would become more profitable and popular with their streams always topping the charts. But there was also another reason they weren't able to go, which many people often forget. Because TSM had recently got their own gaming house, they were locked into a year-long lease for their property in New York. Rumors have it that OGN was willing to subsidize a portion of their rent if they chose to come, but it would still put a massive financial strain on the team and organization. Either way, though, when it came to competition, there was a reason most other Western teams decided to make the sacrifices that they did and spend the year in Korea. They wanted to be the best in the world and have a real chance at standing up to competition from the East. TSM's decision to not go would end up cursing them with poor international play. And not just poor, but sometimes downright embarrassing. This would end up being like the curse of the Bambino, or the curse of the Billy Goat. They may have had no other option, but this decision would curse TSM, as they would be unable to beat Koreans for years to come. March 30th, 2012. CLG and Fnatic both record wins against Korean teams in the OGN spring season. It's been one day since TSM had a chance to beat Koreans and failed.
If your goal is to win Worlds, show the fuck up to Korea. Ditch the LCS. There is nothing to say that you can't take a year off of being in the LCS, move your team to Korea, and then compete in Champions. You may take a hit to your brand if you do this, absolutely. But until, I don't want to hear any more fucking talk from coaches or team owners or anybody in the West about our goal is to win Worlds, because in my mind, if you are not doing this thing, that is not true. Your goal is to stay in the LCS, to reap the rewards of Western sponsors, and to grow your brand. It is not to win a fucking tournament.
The immediate aftermath of the decision really helped TSM a lot on every other front. CLG spent almost the whole year in Korea, meaning that TSM were able to sweep all the local tournaments pretty easily. At the time, NA was a bit of a duopoly, with TSM and CLG being the best teams, but not just the best by a little. All the other organizations that existed at the time, MTW, Orbit Gaming, Team Dynamic, and Team Curse, were all well below the skill level and success of TSM and CLG. There was one amateur team from NA who came out of nowhere recently and was toppling all the best competition of NA and EU, but That's a story for another time. Without many exceptions, TSM began crushing nearly every local tournament without their counterpart there to stop them. Even when CLG did come back and compete occasionally in a few majors, TSM managed to get the best of them. During this time period, there were a few warning signs as TSM did struggle slightly internationally, more so than the other NA teams. They'd record losses both against Europeans and the occasional Koreans they'd face. The Korean losses in particular were somewhat astonishing with just how badly TSM would lose. For instance, Azubu Blaze would come over for an event called the 2012 MLG Summer Arena. Blaze were a team that was considered one of the best by Korean standards, and many Westerners who spent time in Korea practiced and scrimmaged against them pretty regularly. So funnily enough, Team Curse, who just so happened to have the former jungler of CLG, a player named Saint Vicious, who had spent time in Korea, they were able to beat Blaze and take a game off them, handing them the only loss they would have in that tournament. This was partially due to Saint Vicious and his incredible jungle Alistar, as he had a good understanding of what he had to do to compete with Koreans. TSM, however, did not. They would get swept in the group stage and then get swept in the finals. One thing I should probably mention about these early days of TSM is their Baylife attitude. See, it wasn't just their success at local tournaments that gave them their popularity. The team had a very interesting mentality and attitude that fans loved them for, namely Baylife. This was a phrase popularized which loosely meant, I don't care about the consequences, fuck it, Baylife. It was a sort of dude bro mentality that referred to the San Francisco Bay Area. Reginald and his brother were born and grew up a few minutes away from San Francisco in San Jose, California. It was an odd mantra for a competitive gaming team to have. I mean, while you had most other teams in the world sitting at their computers 10 hours a day, practicing and practicing in an attempt to get better, TSM seemed much more chill and laid back. They still practiced and worked very hard, of course, but you didn't see it as much when it was masked by all the chill content they put out. They were making vlogs, they were streaming, they were having fun with each other and being goofballs together. When you couple the fact that they had such a laid-back Baylife mentality with the results they were getting, stomping tournaments and still getting first place, you can see what gave them their charm. They weren't your stereotypical competitive gaming nerds, but they took first place home anyway. Even if they did still put in the hours to practice and improve, you always got this sense that they never forgot to have fun. Nowadays, I'm sure TSM fans still look back on those times with fond memories. Moments like when Odd One ate so many frozen microwave dinners he actually got scurvy, or when Dyrus tried to use the microwave to heat up some food for 40 minutes instead of 4 and nearly burnt their house down.
And everything, and now our house smells like plastic, like our microwave's all fucked up, everything's all burnt up. Look, Chaos, we just evacuated the house. We have to leave the house for the whole day because everything smells like plastic and we can't inhale this. So we're doing a really short vlog. This is probably really bad for us to inhale right now. And we should be in the house right now, but we're gonna do this vlog really quick. What do you have to say about Dyrus? Fucking Dyrus.
TSM really felt like a family as much as they felt like an esports team. This was strengthened by the fact that they stuck together like a family for an incredibly long period of time. Most other teams around the same time period were changing their rosters, swapping roles, and trying to figure out the best possible combination of players that they could have to win every tournament they possibly could. But TSM, on the other hand, were pretty famous for a lack of roster changes. At this point, since the original 5-man roster was solidified, the only change that they had ever made was replacing their top laner, the Rain Man, with Dyrus, who was the former top laner of Epic. This roster change came from differences between Rain Man and Reginald and how they viewed practice. Rain Man thought the best way for players to practice and improve was through grinding solo queue as much as possible, while Reginald was convinced the team needed to scrimmage and practice against other competitive teams in a more serious setting. So you can still see there was a competitive element of the team wanting to be better and be prepared for competition. TSM really did want to be the best they possibly could, but that lack of international experience was about to rear its ugly head. The Season 2 World Finals were quickly approaching. TSM had stomped their NA competition as usual leading up to Worlds, getting the first seed from North America. This meant they were given a bye directly out of the group stage and seeded into the bracket, so all they had to do was win a couple of series and they would be in the finals with a chance to win it all. With how dominant they had been recently, that success had to translate internationally, right?
On to Reginald, he goes down. Dyrus is half health coming into this fight. They do drop down Cloud Templar, the 1-for-1 now, but slivers of health all on the side of Team Solo Mid. Chaos grabbed into the really not there to capitalize on it. TSM backing off, but it looks like they are getting wiped out in this fight right here. Templar is so tanky. They're trying to thwart out Team Solo Mid, trying to stop that path to the championships, and Azubu Frost will knock out Team Solo Mid.
It's important to note here that this series was marred by some controversy. See, this World Championship had a pretty big design flaw with how its stage was set up. The players who were competing were situated slightly in front of the screen that was broadcasting the game to the crowd. This meant that if players turned around, they could look up at the screen and get information on where the enemy team was positioned and what they were doing. The fog of war that usually obscures anything that your team doesn't have in line of sight would essentially be lifted. During this series, Dyrus would end up looking at the screen once, but it was probably more so out of curiosity than anything. A number of players did this throughout the tournament, and Riot determined after a short investigation that none of them gained any sort of meaningful information that could have affected the match. However, during the Frost vs TSM series, Frost's AD carry player, Woong, did look at the screen and gain meaningful information that was determined to have an impact on the game. He looked to see where TSM was going at the level 1 invade so his team could choose to avoid them. Keep in mind, this wasn't a meta where level 1 was pretty much everything. If you knew where your opponents were and where the enemy jungle started, you could essentially play the first 7 minutes of the game for free. You wouldn't have to worry about jungle ganks, and it would be very, very easy to predict every movement the enemy team made, as you would know their starting setup when they didn't know yours. This gave Frost a huge advantage, and Riot would end up fining the team $30,000 for the incident. This controversy left plenty of TSM fans and players furious. These early days of League almost always had either best of 1 or best of 3 series, and a single game being handed to one opponent for free could completely alter the outcome of a tournament. If this setup was just a little bit smarter, or if Frost simply didn't cheat, history could have been much, much different. But still, Reginald in particular would be incredibly upset from the incident. He would announce a retirement from competitive play and was visibly upset and frustrated at the events that occurred in an interview that happened shortly after the series. Not only did Frost cheat when playing against TSM, which obviously was very frustrating, but honestly, they were also the better team. It couldn't have been easy for TSM players and fans to stomach the fact that they were still the lesser team even if Frost cheated. At the end of the day, the Koreans still outmatched TSM and outclassed them incredibly hard. Reginald would choose to not retire a few days after this announcement, as TSM couldn't exactly find a new mid laner anytime in the near future, as big things were about to happen right around the corner. An official competitive regular season league named the League Championship Series, or LCS, was about to begin in the spring. For the first time ever, a massive, well-funded esport in the West would have the backing and structure of a traditional sports league like the NFL or MLB. Before that though, one of the largest tournaments that League of Legends would ever end up seeing, one that nearly matched the size and scale of Worlds, named IPL 5, was about to start to close out the year. At IPL 5, TSM would do okay in the group stage and would end up making it into the bracket, but once in bracket, they would fail miserably against international competition yet again. They'd start off by getting swept 2-0 by CLG EU and get knocked into the losers bracket. After getting matched up against Azubu Blaze again in losers, they'd get swept 2-0 and be knocked out of the tournament much earlier than planned. 245 days now. This would be heartbreaking for TSM fans on a few levels. Not only did they get knocked out of the tournament much earlier than most people expected, but they seemed lost and were no longer kings of NA. CLG managed to make it a few rounds, only losing by narrow margins 2-1 before they were knocked into losers and then eventually knocked out. Hell, even Curse made it further than TSM before getting knocked out by the reigning world champions Taipei Assassins. What really stung though was IPL 5 would be the last international tournament that wasn't run by Riot for years, as the LCS was about to begin, and because of that, no independent tournaments would be allowed or able to compete with it. This meant that TSM TSM would have a very long period of time before they'd get a shot at redemption, but they had even bigger problems to worry about now. In the very first LCS game ever, TSM would face off against their old rivals CLG and lose.
Oh! Link just W'd that golem right across the wall. They used the Explorer 60-second duration ward, and look at that. There's no way they can jack this golem. That's a beautiful steal.
Very nice job. Good play of mind games right here. They jump onto Chowster, but they go for double lift on the execute there with Elise. Dyrus is forced to back out at half health now. Reginald trying to go from the side, but Hotshot sees him in the fog of war. They may be able to take him down as the intervention goes on. Swap back into the fight. Great job by double lift. Reginald makes it out, but he flashes into the fight to throw down intervention on himself. Way too early into the fight, but they may have enough damage here with the amount of people just piled on. No, it's going to be CLG. They're just turning this around in an obliteration fight in front of the Baron as all 5 make it out clean and head for the base.
And that's going to be the surrender vote. CLG 1-0 in the LCS, the very first victory of the day, first victory of the season, and there they are on your screen.
This resulted in Reginald making likely one of the hardest decisions he'd ever have to make, to break apart his family and make a roster change. For the first split of the NALCS, TSM would have 2 AD carries. Their main carry, Katowice, who had been with the team almost since its inception, would unfortunately be riding the bench as a substitute, as WildTurtle, a new AD carry who had shown tons of promise previously playing for Cloud9, would be trying out for the team. Fans were hesitant to accept WildTurtle at first, as this was the first roster change TSM had made in over 2 years, but those fears were quickly quelled when WildTurtle got a pentakill in his very first game playing for TSM.
Can they turn it around? WildTurtle at the back, just hitting one after the other. There's a double kill for him. Laudamonis goes in, that's going to feed him a triple kill. MIA strand, that's going to be a quadra kill. Can he get the pentakill? Front you, 1-on-1, it's going to be the pentakill for a beautiful play. WildTurtle stepping up. Katowice, you have something to answer right now because your replacement is doing a fantastic job.
Even if they were rewarded with success for this roster change, it wouldn't make it any less hard when their first family member had to leave.
After what happened, we're going to be choosing to go with WildTurtle. Okay. And that means that you're off the team. Okay. We have a good... What that means is you're going to have to move out today, but we're going to get you a flight to wherever you want to go.
No longer TSM, yeah.
You understand why I'm sad now.
Yeah.
The girlfriend's not the only thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss you, dude. Before the best friend.
Definitely stay in touch.
Following the roster change, TSM would look even better than before for a while. They'd take first place in the 2013 spring split of LCS, as well as first place in the playoff series that followed. They'd ultimately have less success during the summer split, but still had high hopes headed into the World Championships. 1 year after their disappointing result, they'd have a chance to prove themselves better off with the experience under their belt. Riot was still using the bye format at this point, seeding the top teams from each region directly into playoffs, but this time TSM didn't get the #1 seed because of their second place summer split finish. This time, they'd have multiple games in the group stage against a Korean team, Chinese team, European team, and a wildcard team. Seeing as this was the first international tournament since their disappointing IPL 5 performance, this was a great opportunity for them to shake some demons off their back.
The odd one finds himself, he is going to flash away. DFG comes out, Stranglethorns picks up the final hit. Now all of a sudden Xpecial's in trouble. Crescendo did land, but it isn't going to be enough to save them. The charm goes wide, Equalizer comes down. WildTurtle secures a kill onto Fakers, he's been exhausted. Rumble is going to be able to pick up a kill there onto Zara in the background. Dyrus does get dropped, that's a double kill for Impact. A 2 for 4, and Reginald was a little late to the party. TSM, after playing so safe for so long, face check basically. Impact closes off Xpecial as Bengi now dives forward. Piglet is going to cleanse out Mood Knight. Damage just continues to tick as Dyrus is overheating, so no more spells can come down. WildTurtle's doing the best he can, but he gets dropped! The ace in the hole finishes it off. Double kill for Impact, double kill for Piglet. The tower's gonna drop. Piglet has rejoined. He's gonna be able to close out the kill. Ladies and gentlemen, SK Telecom T1 is your second team in Group A. They pick up the win against TSM.
And SK Telecom are going to go all 5. They're going in, jumping on towards Dyrus. He's in all sorts of trouble. Remember, Requiem is down. That Defile's not doing enough damage. TSM are getting wrecked here. We see one going down. He was X Special. The odd one has to back away from this one. Reggie is in trouble. He's running for his life. But it's going to be a double for Impact and a 3-4-0. Imp is going to go all in, but the tower's already gone down. Tries to get away with it from the Living Shadow. Flashes out. Impact's not having any of it. He wrecks him. He just lost 900 hit points. That's all he lost that whole fight.
Yeah, and here's SKT with the rest of their team just happily controlling the Baron.
Bengi going in. He's got a bit deep. He's low on hit points. Oddwell might be able to get on towards him, get that damage down. The turret hit not going to be enough. X Special getting locked down. Piglet just wrecking now. Picks up the double. Can turn it into a triple. Yes, he will. And that will be the game for SK Telecom T1. The third match of the day, and they go 2-0 for the day.
And if SKT can win...
At some point during this group stage, I think Reginald knew that his time as a player had come to an end. He had been balancing running the business of TSM as well as trying to compete as one of the top mid laners out there all this time, and simply put, he wasn't in his prime anymore. I think most of TSM had realized that in spite of all their successes they shared previously, all great eras have to come to an end, so they tried to send it off with a bang.
He's a strong jungler and coming in and ganking lanes just for harass as well. All right, we warned you.
Yep, there it is. That gets a bit of a standing ovation from the Teemo lovers. Oh man.
He's not that furry, I guess. He's covered in the spacesuit.
Right on top of him. He's got to be running out of oxygen. He's going to come out soon. Oh, the flash flame, but they go for Sona. Some of the lowest HP in the beginning of the game. Reggie gets first blood for Reginald, but he goes down valiantly.
All right.
Played really well. They played their heart out, and they had fun. Really counts. Great game.
They gave their fans a game.
Gave their fans a game.
Truer words never spoken.
Following the Season 3 World Championship, the old Baylife group would slowly fall by the wayside and move on to greener pastures. Reginald would step down from playing competitively himself to focus 100% of his efforts on running the business, and speaking from personal experience, this is one of the hardest things a person can do. It's incredibly hard to admit, I'm not good enough, and make a change when you're your own boss and have the final decision-making power. But this decision would reward TSM with one of the greatest Western players of all time, their current star mid laner, Bjergsen. After the spring split and a second place finish to Cloud9, TSM would also drop their jungler, the Odd One, as well as their support, X Special. Keep in mind, we're in Season 4 now, and these players had been playing with TSM since nearly 4 years ago, all the way back in Season 1. This was heartbreaking to see, even for people who weren't TSM fans, as the old guard was finally replaced. With their departure, the team had completely removed the original Baylife roster and replaced them in an attempt to further their success. Although the summer split would end somewhat disappointingly, they'd win the summer playoff to get the first seed going into the 2014 Season 4 World Championship. Their new roster had gone through a complete overhaul, and they had been finding a lot of success because of it. At the Season 4 Worlds, they tried to translate that success to the stage and change their international reputation that had been haunting them for years.
Absolutely, the one thing TSM needs to be careful of, which we're there, Dyrus going straight in, finds Jay, puts the glitter lance down, the rest of TSM close the gap, they're going to get the stun down on him, Jay goes down, and now it's going to be Morning, he finds Dyrus, but again, the wild growth is strong enough, and Morning's now in trouble, he's going to get picked up, BB comes around, he's just not got the damage though, WildTurtle does, he's going to go for the reset, gets on towards him, wins his low, he fancies it, he goes for it, he hasn't got the range yet, he's only level 11.
They might try to get a few more kills. So one last ditch effort coming in from the Taipei Assassins. Turtle goes a little too hard. He goes down, but it is going to be Team Solo Mid taking down the Taipei Assassins.
Oh, Crescendo does not land this time around, and that's the Aqua Prism followed by the bubble. Brilliant play, but then Raiden gets away. WildTurtle not going to get turned around. Candy Panda wants to pursue, but Amazing's coming in around the side. Candy gets back towards him, comes around the backside. side and ready. Sonic Wave doesn't land. No reactions. Bjergsen goes. Dyrus teleports in. TSM,
so dead.
5-man pylon in the bottom. SK Gaming in all sorts of trouble. Freddy comes down to join the party, but he's simply just another death for TSM. That's a double for WildTurtle. 3 for 0. Fantastic play by TSM. He's going to go down. They're aced in their base at 23 and a half minutes. And the surrender for Game 2 at World's Group Stages comes in from SK. Team Solo Mid takes the game 15-1.
Off the Dragon Pit. Imp, though, exposed himself because he has backup.
Oh, Bjergsen trying to get out of this one. The poison can take him down, but the Wild Growth is a save there. Retribution kill on each side. They get 1 and 1, and they're going to back off.
But count the ultimates right here. Amazing actually gets him pretty low. Here's the fight.
Amazing out of this one. He's already done what he can. He tries to get back in. A great monsoon from Lustboy. Dyrus is still alive. So many low health bars, so they're able to finish off Dandy there, as well as Amazing. The junglers are out. On to Lustboy as Mata locks in another one and brings off the late game comp. Every hook, like I said, heat-seeking coming out of Mata. What can they ban? What can they do? TSM has to think about Game 2 already. 27 minutes in, the double kill for him. 12-3, and Game 1 is over in favor of Samsung.
Let's see what we're gonna have a fight early on. Frustratingly efficient, but let's see how it works.
A level 1 5v5. Dandy doesn't go down. Illusion passive. Lustboy picks up first blood. Ignites down as well. And Samsung White is running for the hills. Looper goes down. The duo lane picking up the kills. Best of it.
TSM walks through a ward with 5 people at level 1 and still wins.
Team Solo Mid looking to Nexus turrets. The top one's gonna fall. This could be a hectic fight, but it's also gonna be one in favor of Team Solo Mid to start it off.
They got it.
Kill
They're
going
gonna
on
win.
to Mata. It's gonna be Game 3 in favor of Team Solo Mid. They keep protection right now to Imp. Where's the intervention going to come out? It already has happened, and that's going to be Imp going down. Mata falls as well. The duos of both teams have fallen, so the power to come out of the mid lane all the way over the resonating strike. Junglers walk away bleeding. Good grab there. Whoa, he's going to go down here. Hits it up. That's the ignite. That's the burn. Mata goes down. Do they follow? No, they lose Amazing in the retribution kill there, but it seems like White is all right with that.
They can keep fighting because they didn't use the ulti from Lupo here. He actually saved it. Didn't want to use it on Mata, so they can keep going with the 4 members.
Amazing gets the next Yasuo ult, and he gets the final Q from Pawn. That's 4 members down. Bjergsen doing what he can to stay alive, but it's not going to be enough.
And unfortunately for them, it is the end of the road. Their world championship journey is now over. But they can take a lot into next season. They defeated a Korean team for the first time in their team's history, and they dealt the favorites to win the tournament. An unhappy victory.
Finally, for the first time since Season 1, TSM had put up a respectable performance on the world stage. They had managed to beat the European team SK Gaming to make it out of groups, and would only end up getting knocked out by the eventual world champions, Samsung Galaxy White. And for the first time ever, they would manage to take a game off a Korean team, beating Samsung once in the best of 5. However, they'd still be knocked out, and only ended up beating them in a single match when Samsung was already up 2-0. Many critics may say Samsung wasn't exactly trying too hard in that Game 3, but either way, TSM still took a game off them, although it has still been 917 days of TSM not advancing in tournaments when matched up against Koreans. The team had come so far and grown so much over the past couple years, but they still had a few demons haunting them. Luckily though, it wouldn't be long before they got another chance. Since Riot had taken over the tournament scene in League of Legends with their regular season leagues in every region, coupled with the World Championship and Mid-Season Invitational, almost every single independent tournament organizer had been wiped off the face of the earth, or at the very least dropped their League of Legends tournaments. MLG, IPL, and DreamHack had all stopped running regular league tournaments featuring the top teams, and this meant most teams didn't get opportunities to play at or practice against international competition other than once or twice a year. However, at the time there was still one independent tournament organizer left, IEM, the Intel Extreme Masters. In mid-March of 2015, IEM would host their Season 9 World Championship a few weeks after the regular seasons around the world had all kicked off. this was an interesting tournament as it was supposed to host the best of the best. 4 previous IEM champions of the past year, Team WE, C9, Gambit, and Flash Wolves would all be in attendance, as well as the current Rank 1 EU LCS team, the current Rank 1 NA LCS team, and the current Ranks 1 and 2 LCK teams from Korea. For TSM, this was their golden opportunity to have one last shot at modern international glory. The series would have a pretty odd structure. 2 groups of 4 teams would each be placed into a small group stage bracket and would go head-to-head against each other in a best-of-1. Whoever advanced after 2 rounds, as well as whoever could be the champions of the losers bracket, would qualify for the event's finals bracket. The finals bracket would include a best-of-3 in the semifinals and a grand finals best-of-5. But the first games were only best-of-1s, so teams had to be ready and on edge, or they could be knocked out very early. After handling Team WE very well, TSM would have to go up against CJ Entus. This was one of the better teams from Korea. It was made up of mostly former Azubu Blaze and Azubu Frost players, including arguably the greatest support player to ever play the game. And then TSM did this.
Life, it's interesting to see him on that Leona. It's not a champion that we've seen him play a whole lot of lately, but here we go, going in again, jumping onto Santorin. The tower does go down. Santorin goes down as well. First blood going over Ambition, and they're not done yet. Shy getting low, but he's gonna pop that ult. He just hit level 6, so no danger there for CJ. And a flash for Ambition, trying to go in on the Lustboy. They will. Madlife picks up that kill. So even though TSM picked up that turret, CJ returns with 2 kills of their own.
Not finished off the tower. There is Dyrus moving in, and Tibbers goes down.
Yeah, Solar Flare used by Madlife, but didn't accomplish a whole lot. Madlife trying to get in for a stun, but again, he's on his own. Ambition already on the run. Shy as well. Coco just trying to flee for his life. Dyrus flashes ahead to get that twisted advance. Another kill onto Madlife. And look at this, Coco flashing out of the bear pit.
Pretty much the rest of his team on the other side of it now. They are going to go for Shy. Can they finish him off here and get through the rest of the team? Madlife also going to be caught up. He will surely fall as Santorin jumps in. Ambition, the next target. He goes down as well. Surely here. There we go. Finished off by WildTurtle.
Well, just die there. This tower's going to go down.
Look at that. First Nexus turret out of the way. Shy down. Only Coco up space. Still 20 seconds away. Madlife goes in deep. Gets blown up immediately. WildTurtle tanking that Nexus turret. They're going to take out Coco as well. And guys, at 29 minutes, can you believe it? Team Solomon takes down CJ Entus. They're moving on. GG. Wow.
After 1,078 days since their first opportunity to beat Koreans in a major League of Legends tournament and advance, TSM had finally broken the curse. Their losing streak was over, and they qualified for the finals. Critics may say that this was just a best-of-1 or that CJ Entus wasn't in their prime, but TSM couldn't control who was put in front of them or how they had to beat them. They could only play their best, and they did. When seeded into the finals bracket for this tournament, TSM would handle the Taiwanese team Flash Wolves pretty well and made it to the finals, but they'd likely have to face off against the undisputed champions of Korea. On the other side of the bracket, the best team in Korea at the time, GE Tigers, were about to face off against World Elite, and there's an important thing to note here. Remember how I mentioned World Elite qualified for this tournament because they had previously won a local IEM championship a few months ago, but since that championship, they actually turned into a pretty awful team. They would finish the current regular season of the Chinese League in 8th place, where if they dropped even one more spot, they would have been relegated. In fact, all the original members of the WE team that won that IEM, they had all been replaced. They broke up, and the WE organization had gotten a completely new roster together who wasn't very good. They were only there because of the name. And I mean, Korea was the best region in the world. They still are. The GE Tigers were the eventual undisputed champions of the Korean League. This has to be a slaughter, right?
To get Frey red. There's a hook onto Smeb. I don't know if you want to hook him.
Well, we'll find out. Mystic really low. There's the equalizer dropped already. Smeb getting into the back lines. There's 1 kill for him, 1 kill for Prey. And Spirit getting
Here comes
taken
Aluka.
out. Yep. Sky, Aluka coming in from behind. Well, immediately knock up on Shia. Aluka trying to get the back lines against Smeb.
in a lot of trouble. GE Tigers will close out a very convincing one, going from 4K down at about 15 minutes to now about 14,000 gold ahead at the end. There goes the Nexus. GE Tigers with a pretty convincing game one. A little bit forward here. Blue team does take the Dragon though. WE managed to steal it, and now Prey in a little bit of trouble. Knockups coming in. Aluka making a big difference. Equalizer does go down. Mystic with the first kill. Aluka still charging down the river. That's a double kill now for Mystic. GE on the run. Spirit coming in to try to make something happen against Smeb, turning with that flame spitter, but again a triple kill now for Mystic. Kuro in a little bit of trouble. He's slowed up, trying to get back to that turret. There's another kill, and it looks like WE, they might actually be able to get an ace. Mystic coming in again. Windwall goes up. Yasuo comes back, and Kuro gets a shutdown onto Mystic. So in the end, an ace for WE. Ooh, Lee going in just by himself and dying. Where is the coordination here? And look at that, Aluka coming in, threading the needle, getting a lot done. And GE Tigers in trouble yet again. A double kill coming in for Gia. Pops that Zonia's hourglass, and Smeb not able to get back for the kill. I think he got charmed there as well and Prey down. That is a perfect ace for WE.
That's going to be the game.
I think they're going to go try to end it. I think you're right. Well, a little bit of a duel in the mid lane. Smeb still in a lot of trouble. Is he going to be able to get out? Pops that ultimate. Doesn't look like it. Nice dark binding. There's a catch onto Smeb. Meanwhile, Spear comes in. There's knock up on the Prey. Onslaught of Shadows comes through. Doesn't hit the AD carry. And now the exhaust onto Aluka. GE trying to turn this one around. Kuro manages to pick up a kill, but Shia responds in kind with a double, though. Things are not going well for GE Tigers. A double kill for Mystic. Prey on his own. A double kill now for Kuro, though. And it is a bloody battle, and the GE Tigers looks like they'll barely lose it. And that is an ace. Spirit and Shia survive. WE is poised to win this match and go to the grand finals against TSM. Here they go for the Nexus turrets. Number one goes down. Only Kuro and Durrell left to stand behind them and save that perfect record for the GE Tigers. I don't think they can do it.
The world's best team is beaten by China's worst
I can't believe it. There it is. GG.
Whoa! What an incredible result. And this tournament has just been chock full of some...
Properly. There's a ward.
Oh, and there's trap set up there. The Spirit's going to go down straight away, and this is going to be at least 2 kills here. Bjergsen gets the first one. We'll get the second one. Here come the rest of the team, and that's a lot of damage. Bjergsen shut down. There is Shie diving in, but Dyrus with his ultimate running. They should be able to finish off Aluka without losing any more men. This should be a 4 for 2 and will be in favor of TSM. Slipping in there, but it is Dyrus that makes the first big push right into the middle of the team, and half of them pretty much down to half health as the exhaust coming as well. Lost Boy will fall down, but that may be the only casualty that they get here. Aluka is the next target. Santorin trying to stick to him. That is a current 1 for 4. Aluka did get away, but TSM might be able to push for the win.
Phenomenal target picking from Team Solo Mid. They are going to take out World Elite to pick up a fairly convincing win.
If you do swap out to 1-3-1, you're gonna die in the side lanes. Let's see WildTurtle though. Big jump down.
Oh, the owner ultimate does come through, but Spirit going low and he'll be finished. Bjergsen pounces in from the side. They've taken the Dragon. They've got 3-4 kills now, and that just went from bad to worse for World Elite. Bjergsen almost being picked off, but only Mystic is left standing here. Doesn't quite get knocked up by the Howling Gale. That won't matter to them though. A Monsoon will give TSM a little bit more health, and they are going to be going through, finishing everything off, and actually a surrender in the end from Team WE.
Side lanes, the soul lanes are losing, and now Bjergsen wants another kill.
Wow, that was pretty impressive stuff there. He actually got charmed anyway, and he's going to get the kill. There is Spirit diving in. Santorin is probably going to get sacrificed, but they should be able to pick up Spirit as well. It's another one for Bjergsen. It might be a double for Bjergsen. No, not quite in range for that one of their own jungle, and this could be the attempt that they're looking for. Spirit will go in with Aluka, but look at the turnaround from Santorin. Dyrus will get one. Bjergsen now joins the fight, but the Monsoon from UJ will cause them problems. Meanwhile, Turtle completely taking out Shia of that fight, and it leaves just Aluka trying to trot away from that one. And there are 3 men chasing him in. Once Dyrus gets the callback down, it will drop here finally, and that's 4 men down almost instantly as they try for one last engage. The sun comes in. UJ will be popped, and that is the 8th for Team Solo Mid. And with 20 seconds left on the clock, they are going to push straight through. There's the surrender. Team Solo Mid are the Intel Extreme Masters World Champions.
And a great performance from TSM. They fell behind in game 1, but when they turned it around through that...
The story of TSM is one of a group of players that started off more as friends than anything else. They haven't always had their sights set on being the best team that they could, and they were struck with one of the roughest streaks of international performance because of it. But in spite of all the hardship in those years, they managed to make all the tough decisions they needed to, and they got rid of this horrible albatross. TSM would become one of the most recognizable names in esports in the world and one of the most successful local teams in North American history. They still struggle with their performance internationally from time to time, and shortly after this, the last old member of TSM's roster, Dyrus, would also end up retiring from competitive play. None of those old family members remain today. But hey, they sure have a lot to show for that time they put in.